Penn State is now the team to beat after hiring Jim Knowles away from Ohio State.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. My name is Zach Seyko. I am your host of the show. And yes, Penn State now becomes the team to beat. We're going to talk to Spencer McLaughlin of Locked On College Football to get the outside perspective of this, but really emphasize here that Penn State is not only a national title contender, but should be considered the top team going into this 2025 season. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head over to FanDuel.com to get started. Of course, always appreciate your comments, your thoughts down below. Let me know what you think about Jim Knowles to Penn State. And they're not just a fringe national title contender. This is all in. This is what it looks like. You don't just reset the coordinator market on accident. Penn State fully did this knowing very well that they are going after a national championship. They got Jim Knowles for this exact reason. So why they are the top team going into 2025, I mean, let's start with Jim Knowles. You just hired the best defensive coordinator away from the defending national champion, the team that's been a thorn in your side for the past decade, a team that you have only beaten once, if you're James Franklin in your tenure at Penn State, and you just went and convinced Jim Knowles to leave arguably one of the best setups in all of college football. I will give the Buckeyes that. That makes it even more bold of a move that you were able to convince Jim Knowles to leave his job at Ohio State to, help construct. Penn State's defense is in a really good spot. But now Jim Knowles makes it that much better. And they did that to a team that is in the Big Ten Conference, a team that they have lost to more often than not, and have been second fiddle to this entire time outside of Michigan for a few select seasons as well. So getting the best defensive coordinator in college football puts Penn State over the top as, yeah, this is a top 5 team. We can argue that, to this is the team to beat, because now you also create the best coordinator duo in the entire country. Who's the coordinator that has always given Andy Kotelnicki fits? Okay, you might point out the Notre Dame game and say, well, Penn State still scored 24 points in that game. But the coordinator that has not once but twice given Andy Kotelnicki fits at Kansas and at Penn State has been Jim Knowles. When Jim Knowles was at Oklahoma State, gave Andy Kotelnicki problems. When Jim Knowles was at Ohio State this past season and they matched up together, Andy Kotelnicki's offense couldn't score from inside the 5, not once but twice. And I don't like thinking about that. I don't like rehashing that. But now you go get that coordinator that had the answers, and you bring him on staff and you pair him together. Oh, well, I've seen comments that say that Andy Kotelnicki is not that good of an offensive coordinator. Are we being serious right now about that? Andy Kotelnicki is one of the best. There was a reason that West Virginia was very close to hiring him for their head coaching job. And that's another battle that Penn State won. They were able to retain Andy Kotelnicki, who was very close to leaving and getting a promotion for a head coaching job, and comes back to Penn State with the idea that they are going to win a national championship. So you create the best coordinator duo in all of the country. That's not a hot take. That's honestly a reasonable take at this point. Andy Kotelnicki took a top 55 offense and turned them into a top 20 offense conservatively. When you look at yards, points, well, I look at yards per play. That is one of the statistics that will tell you everything about an offense or a defense. Andy Kotelnicki at Penn State, top 10 in yards per play. In Penn State's offense, there is no reason that they can't be better in 2025. And why I say that is because you now have a defense that's not going to be just Tom Allen did a good job, but Jim Knowles can do a great job. And it's that balance. It's that cohesiveness where the defense can bail you out, the offense can bail you out offensively, defensively, going back to one another and playing complementary football. oh, and Penn State returns Drew Allar. Whatever the naysayers want to say, whatever the internet comments want to say, Drew Allar is still a good quarterback. Just because he had a bad game in the national semifinal does not change my opinion about him. He is going to take another step forward. He is in his 4th year of college football with the same program, 3rd consecutive year starting, and 2nd year in the offense that helped him take a major step forward. You don't think that he's not going to take another step forward, that he's just going to be the same quarterback, or he's going to regress? Okay, so you have a 3rd year starting quarterback in this age of college football. What other program can say that at this point in time? How about the fact that they returned not 1, but 2 NFL caliber running backs in Nicholas Singleton and Kaytron Allen as 4th year consecutive starters? Both of them. They have been co-starters since their true freshman seasons, which feels like a lifetime ago, but they're going into their 4th season starting. They should have been off to the NFL. They were ranked as top 10 running backs. That'll get you selected in the 3rd or 4th round of 2025. They are going to get better. And then you add Kyron Hudson and Devontae Ross in the transfer portal. Kyron Hudson will catch any football that you throw his way. He has some insane catching ability. We'll see how he does with his route running and separation. He also gives you blocking ability. Julian Fleming was valuable to this Penn State team. I know the stat sheet might say differently, but Penn State's going to tell you otherwise. And it shows up in the fact that Nicholas Singleton and Kaytron Allen had their best seasons at Penn State. And a big reason was wide receiver blocking. You are going to get that from Kyron Hudson. He will be one of the blockers on the outside for them. Oh, you get 4 starters on the offensive line back that started to peak, that started to hit their stride against the likes of Boise State, SMU, and Oregon, some of which had the best front sevens in all of college football. Yes, they did. That is not an exaggeration. Those teams had some of the best defensive front sevens. Yes, the group of 5 school in Boise State, they didn't get to the Fiesta Bowl by accident. And same thing with ACC runner-up SMU. They had a top 3 run defense, and Penn State's offensive line held their own, did an excellent job, and an excellent job against Oregon too. And Spencer will be able to attest to that in the final segment, so we'll get his thoughts there. So you get all of that back on offense. But they're losing Tyler Warren. Yeah, that is a big deal. That is a big deal. And you don't just casually replace Tyler Warren, but you have a former 5-star recruit waiting in the wings in Luke Reynolds. They burned his red shirt. He was ready to play last season. He's going to take a step forward. They have Khalil Dinkins. Penn State also has Andrew Rapplier coming back from injury. So there is a setup here. Well, they don't have any wide receivers. Kyron Hudson's going to beg to differ. I think Kyron Hudson's going to be a solid addition. Devontae Ross gives you a speed threat over the top to force you to respect the deep passing game. And one thing you can't question about Drew Allar is his arm strength. He can throw the football just as far as you need him to. Accuracy, sometimes debatable. I'll give you that criticism about him and some of his decision making, but he can throw the football as far as you need him to. And that's where Devontae Ross comes in, and it opens up avenues for Singleton and Allen to be even better because you have to respect the deep ball. Scheme matters, and Andy Kotelnicki coming back and coupled with Jim Knowles gives you that complementary football that I've already mentioned. But talking about the defense specifically, let's go back. So you have Jim Knowles, you have this offense that is reloaded, retooled to be a strong group in the 2025 season. Jim Knowles is inheriting one of the best defensive groups. Abdul Carter is gone. Kobe King is gone, but those are the only 2 substantial losses. They get back Deni Dennis Sutton, Zane Durant, who are going to turn into those superstar caliber faces of the defense. Alonzo Ford is going to return. He gave you quality snaps before the injury. He's going to be a starter alongside Zane Durant. And I think people forgot about some of the other injured players that didn't play for Penn State in 2024. Keon Wiley was getting ready to have a breakout season. So was Zariah Fisher at defensive end. They get Smith Vilbert back. There's a rumor that Amin Vanover is going to be back as well. This defensive line is in a great spot despite not having Abdul Carter. Then I mentioned Keon Wiley with the linebackers. Tony Rojas is going to take a step forward. You get Dom DeLuca back as a 3-year captain. He is going into his 3rd consecutive season as being a captain. Oh, and did I mention Jim Knowles' system fits exactly what Penn State wants to do? I've seen a lot of questions about, well, you need to win now, and Jim Knowles doesn't have the time. You're going to need to give him more time to be competitive. Jim Knowles runs a 4.25. This system, yes, is going to take time in terms of the nuances and adjustments and figuring out who fits where in the defense. Penn State already at least has the base, so it's not completely brand new. This idea isn't completely out of this world for Penn State's defense. Anthony Poindexter is going to stay and got a contract extension, and he is going to work with Jim Knowles as a co-DC. So this is formulating what Penn State got Tom Allen to give them a top 10 group, in my opinion. I thought that was a top 10 defense from a season ago, top 15 conservatively. Jim Knowles was brought in with the idea that you lean on an elite top 5 defense with an offense that is going to be able to run the ball at will, make no mistakes. Michigan did that in 2023. They were considered the team to beat, the all-in favorite, and that's what Penn State is doing. Penn State is all in. They are the team to beat. They have the fewest amount of question marks. When I look at all the other teams, Texas, Ohio State, Oregon, a lot of those teams, they're going to be good. They're going to be competitive. They are all turning to brand new starting quarterbacks, and some of them have new coordinators and new systems to work in. So there's a lot of uncertainty there around the team. Penn State has the best setup going into 2025, and it's going to show sooner rather than later. But what does Knowles' hiring mean for Penn State? We talk about why Penn State is the top team in 2025, but Knowles being hired, poached away from in-conference foe Ohio State. I'll tell you more about it coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And this message is from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible, file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back, guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. That is TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. That is TurboTax.com/guarantees. The Jim Knowles hire by Penn State should send shockwaves around college football. Because when you look at it tangibly, financially, this resets the coordinator market. Penn State, Ohio State, there's no way they get outbid by Penn State. There's no chance. This is a demotion for him. Why would he take this job? And Penn State was a serious player in all of this all along. $3.1 million. They were the one that pushed the bar. And then there's incentives and everything too. He is not only the highest paid defensive coordinator, he is the highest paid coordinator in all of college football. Head coaches don't even make this. Some head coaches don't even make this at the group of 5 level. So Penn State is clearly showing that they are here and are willing to compete and do what it takes in college football, in this modern day and age of college football, by going all in and getting Penn State, getting James Franklin. I think what this shows above all else is that Penn State believes that James Franklin is the head coach, because you don't just open up the checkbook for a guy that we don't know if he's the guy. They are fully committed to James Franklin as being the head coach of this job. And of course, every comment that I see is that, well, Penn State's biggest problem isn't Jim Knowles, it's James Franklin. You still have James Franklin as the head coach. Do you know who went out and recruited and ultimately negotiated with to get him away from Ohio State? Who do you think did all the legwork? Was that Drew Allar? Was that somebody else at Penn? Was that a board of trustee member? No, that was James Franklin who made the call. And this one has been, in a case, long overdue. I'm not saying that Penn State deserved to get Jim Knowles, but Penn State and James Franklin have always had, in a perfect world, on the defensive coordinator wish list, yes, with Manny Diaz and Tom Allen coming into town, James Franklin always had Jim Knowles at the top of his list. And that is not to say that they did not want Manny Diaz, that they did not want Tom Allen, but that Jim Knowles was always a candidate of intrigue. If you were available, would you consider, could we negotiate and talk about you being the next defensive coordinator? And timing is everything. But it's Penn State flexing a muscle here that they consider themselves an elite program, despite what the general public might not think, and James Franklin deserves a lot of credit for that. James Franklin has built one heck of a staff. You have the best coordinator duo in the arguable. This is easily a top 3. If I want to be conservative about this and maybe take off the Penn State glasses for a moment, because I am the Locked On Nittany Lions host, for crying out loud, but I don't see another coordinator duo that is the equivalent of Jim Knowles and Andy Kotelnicki. Feel free to name them. That's fine. That's why we have these discussions down in the comments section. I'm willing and understandable, right? I'm amenable to all of this. But James Franklin has been able to accomplish a lot and fight through different obstacles. Oh, well, he's bad against top 10 teams. He's bad against top 5 teams. I understand his track record. I really do. And it's been, it starts to catch up because they do lose to Oregon. They do lose to Ohio State and Notre Dame in this season in itself. But Penn State said enough is enough. We are going to upgrade the defensive coordinator spot. And that's one of the overall, this logic makes no sense to me. And maybe it makes sense to some of you, because I don't see it the same way. Well, Penn State's problems are offensively. Why would they go after Jim Knowles? Why not? There's always room for improvement. I just got done saying how Tom Allen, give or take, gave Penn State a top 10 to 15 defense. No complaints, but there's always room for improvement. If there's a guy out there that is available that can take your defense to a whole nother level, like a Manny Diaz, and give you a group that is top 3 to 5, why would you not take that? Because the defense, as I've mentioned, when you play complementary football the way that James Franklin wants to, this will help out the offense as well. Defenses force turnovers, create short fields. The offense gets to capitalize on that. It's the symmetry, it's the complementary aspect of playing football with one another. So there's all those different that you just knocked Ohio State backwards in the offseason. The wins are not on the football field, but you just threw a punch at Ohio State and took away its defensive coordinator when they are losing close to 6-7 starters on defense. Now they really got to rework that situation. And Jim Knowles is probably going to bring over a few analysts with him as well. So you just went in and knocked Ohio State a couple steps backward and made their offseason a little more difficult. There's rumors that they're going to lose Chip Kelly as an offensive coordinator too. We'll see how that plays out. He's at least interested in returning to the NFL. And Penn State gets an opportunity to hit them back here. So there's that aspect of it. It's the fact that you are taking a coordinator that fits perfectly with what this Penn State defense is built for. Not only with the talent that they're returning, the veteran experience, the depth at key position groups, but also the fact that this system is not going to be, this is not going to be an overhaul. Jim Knowles and what Penn State has defensively, the personnel will understand. They have a head start in working in his system. They have a head start in all of this. So Jim Knowles' hiring for Penn State is huge because it shows that Penn State is not messing around anymore. They are all in. They are committed to James Franklin himself. And James Franklin continues to, outside of Mike Yurcich and John Donovan a long time ago, what hire has Penn State made that has been bad? And James Franklin is the one that is the architect of all this. He builds the staff. He has really done an excellent job. Oh, but Marcus Hagans, give Marcus Hagans time because he's been on an absolute recruiting tear. These are none of his receivers that he has brought in. So they are going to be patient with him and what he's doing, but Penn State doesn't need wide receivers right now. So the question marks that people have, I think that's being blown out of proportion with the issues that aren't going to affect them. Michigan ran its way to a national title and combined that with an elite top 5 defense. Why can't Penn State do the same? Penn State's absolutely going to do the same. That's the blueprint, and that's why you go get the best defensive coordinator in college football to put you over the top. Also some recruiting implications as well, because Jim Knowles is originally from Philadelphia. He has family in and around the Pennsylvania, New Jersey area. He's going to be back in more of a comfort zone. This is where he's been for most of his life until he bounced around in college football. Was the former head coach at Cornell. I think Jim Knowles is actually going to like this move, settling back in his home area, in his home state. So this is a win across the board. but I want to get the outside perspective in all of this. That's why we're going to turn to the host of Locked On College Football, who has that national perspective, Spencer McLaughlin. Is Penn State a legitimate national title contender, or am I off pace by saying that? I don't think I am. We're going to get to talk to Spencer on the other side of this break. And today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with the FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that is icing on the cake. Download the app or head over to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's right, $200 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's over at FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, an official partner of Super Bowl 59. Let's get the outside perspective in all of this. This is a big move, but I want to leave the Penn State bubble for a moment and welcome on Spencer McLaughlin of Locked On College Football, Locked On Ducks. Yes, talks about Oregon. And Penn State's going to face Oregon. So Spencer, this is a good way to get some early notes for the game that is in week 4 and certainly will be circled on everybody's college football calendar. Penn State makes a splash hire with Jim Knowles. Of course, I've addressed it now in a live episode and the couple segments here, but I want to get your perspective on it because I fully believe that Penn State is the team to beat in 2025, should be considered one of the prohibitive favorites for the national championship when it rolls around to start 2026. There's going to be some concern, so I want to hear them from you. Are they the wide receivers or Drew Allar? Well, Penn State still has James Franklin. I've heard it all, but I don't think Penn State Penn State has the best setup, and nobody has a better setup than the Nittany Lions when you look across college football at the moment.
They feel like they are Ohio State light from a season ago. The narrative around Ohio State going into last year was, hey, they're making a real run at this because look at all the guys who they convinced to come back. Oregon falls into that camp too, by the way. Obviously, it didn't work out as well for my Ducks, but it still was a year where you had guys decide, I'm coming back. A Johnny Cornelius, who's probably going to get drafted here in the NFL, or Jordan Birch, who also is probably a draft pick. Terrence Ferguson is another guy. Like all of these dudes had the option to go to the NFL draft, but wanted to come back for another season. And that was one of the similarities between Oregon and Ohio State coming into the year. And now Penn State has that feel. I don't know that this Penn State, or I don't believe, I should say, that this Penn State core of returners and the roster they'll put on the field is as talented as what Ohio State just had, but that's an incredibly high bar. I mean, incredibly high bar. But when you look around the top teams in college football, Zach, why this is such an exciting move for Penn State fans is, number one, I just watched Jim Knowles put Oregon's offense in a blender for the entire half and chop them up. Like, completely, my takeaway at the time and continues to be, not that Oregon's offense coordinator Will Stein is bad, but that they got outcoached as a staff, Oregon did that day, and Jim Knowles was a big part of it. His attention to detail, right scheme, right play call, right game plan, everything about that was really, really good. This is one of the highest level DCs in all college football. Oklahoma wanted him for a reason, or they were looking to see, even though they have a defensive head coach, right? This is someone who Ryan Day wanted to go get. Why? That's not his side of the ball. He's an offensive guy. He's a quarterbacks guy. He wanted to go get Jim Knowles because of the success he'd had at Oklahoma State. So it's an incredibly exciting move to couple with the core of returners. But when you look at the national title contenders for next season, or who we think they are right now, give me the team that has this feel of everyone's coming back, that can come back. Who else? It's not Texas. Texas has, I think, an incredibly strong roster. Their defensive line is going to be crazy good. Working in a new quarterback, by the way, who I think can be really good in Arch Manning. but has not started a full season and proven I can go win 10 to 12 games in the SEC. That has never been proven. That's a question mark. Dante Moore, the same question at Oregon. Julian Sain, the same question at Ohio State. And remember, Will Howard was so great this past year. The year before, it was Kyle McCord that wasn't good enough in that Buckeyes offense. He was great at Syracuse, but he wasn't good enough for Ohio State to get them to the college football playoff or over the hump and beating Michigan. So I think that this should absolutely perk up the ears of casual Penn State fans to go, wait, is it going to be at this level again? And it should raise the level of interest and intrigue amongst the diehard fans that stay in tune with this stuff. Like, you should not look at this. I can't guarantee that it's going to produce a national championship for Penn State.
No, it's not a guarantee, but there is more optimism than ever in James Franklin's tenure.
100%. And what you have to look at, if you're one of those diehards that lives and dies with Penn State and whether or not they succeed, will they ever break through under James Franklin and whatnot, is you can't do better in this moment. There's nothing better that could have happened in the offseason than hiring Jim Knowles, keeping Andy Kotelnicki, and having, outside of Tyler Warren, your three most important offensive players return. Nothing better could have happened. So at the very least, Penn State is giving themselves a legitimate chance to go win a national championship, the best chance that they can. And you know what? That's all you can really ask for.
And you bring up Ohio State, and certainly, I mean, the building blocks are there. You have a quarterback that, no, Will Howard wasn't with Ohio State for the long term, but he was a veteran, multi-year starter. Drew Allar, 4th year of college football, 3rd consecutive year starting, 2nd year in Andy Kotelnicki's system, the same coordinator in the same offense that helped Allar take that big step forward. Oh, and then you get not one, but 2 NFL caliber running backs that are going into their 4th consecutive years starting, kind of like a Quinshon Judkins and a Travion Henderson. Again, they came together differently, but my point is you have 2 all-star running backs that are co-starting, and honestly, why can't you lean on them? Spencer, let me get the outside perspective. It's that Penn State can't win a national title because they don't have any wide receivers to throw to. Okay, well, that's not true. Kyron Hudson's coming in, and he'll catch anything that you throw at him. Separation's, question mark. We'll see how he can do, but he'll catch anything you throw his way. Then you got a former 5-star tight end waiting to replace Tyler Warren. How convenient, right, for Penn State? You have 4 starters returning on the offensive line from a season ago that started to get together and peak, and you saw that against Oregon, how well Penn State's offensive line did. So there's all of that together. I like the comparison to Ohio State. I honestly, forget about Connor Stallions for a moment. I like the comparison to Michigan a little better because I see J.J. McCarthy going into another year starting action, similar to Drew Allar, Blake Corum to Donovan Edwards, similar to Nicholas Singleton and Kaytron Allen, both offensive lines. Is Penn State going to be the top favorite to win the Joe Moore Award? Not necessarily, but they're not too far off from being one of the best offensive lines in the
I don't know why not.
They're one of the best offensive lines in the entire country. Let's put it that way. And then you bring in Jim Knowles to make this not a fringe top 10 defense, an elite defense where there are no questions. This is a top 5 group. So how did Michigan win a title? Solid quarterback play, a 2-headed monster at running back, some reliable receiving options. There were no elite wide receivers in that Michigan offense. Roman Wilson, and funny enough, Penn State's second receiving option had the same, almost 20 yards fewer than Roman Wilson as that leading pass catcher in Michigan's offense. So Penn State's number 2 had the same amount of receiving yards in the team that can't complete passes and throw to wide receivers. Notre Dame had a really good secondary. Ohio State had a really good secondary. That's just when the wide receivers failed. So Penn State goes and gets replacements that are going to fit in better, and that's why they bring in Jim Knowles to go from a top 10 defense fringe, maybe a top 15 really conservatively, to this is a top 5 group no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, I think that's where the expectation should be. You don't bring in Knowles to keep the defense where it is. Yeah, you don't bring him in to say, hey, this could be a good hire, just, have us in the sand, just keep us top 20. No, this is a swing for the fences, paying to swing for the fences. Oh, by the way, his reported salary is what, $3 million?
Over 3.1.
3.1. Okay. For those who don't keep up with the competitive pay for coordinators, most coordinators don't even make $2 million, let alone 2.5, let alone 3.1. Yep. One of the highest paid coordinators in, and I don't know every single team because I'm sorry, I don't
Why
have that
don't
memorized.
you? How dare you?
I know. How dare I, as a national college football show host, not have the coordinator salary pools memorized for every team in the Big Ten? I don't even know how I got this job. But Oregon's defensive coordinator, Tosh Lupoy, is one of the highest paid coordinators in all of college football. He makes $1.9 million. 1.9. So this is an all-in commitment from Penn State. This is an all-in commitment from James Franklin and the university, and the opportunity is there. Because like I said, I just mentioned a couple teams, but keep going down the list. Zach, can you give me the top 3 returning quarterbacks in the SEC right now?
The SEC, I mean, you're banking
returning
on the fact
quarterbacks that started last year in the SEC.
DJ Lagway is the only one that comes to mind, and Carson Beck left Georgia for Miami, and they're in the ACC.
Yeah, Lenora Sellers at South Carolina, Garrett Nussmeier at LSU, and a bunch of question marks.
Yeah.
Everywhere that you look, Arch Manning could be great, question mark.
First-year starter.
Jackson Arnold at Auburn, question mark. Like, this is uncommon for Penn State to have a third-year returning NFL caliber quarterback starting in his second year with the offense. This defensive coordinator, you're talking me into picking Penn State to get right back to the Final Four, lest we forget there were 3 points from the national championship game.
Without any of those wide receivers, they were able to make it that far, and they had no semblance of a passing game.
And I do think that's a fair question to ask, because it was a shortcoming. Joel Klatt articulated very well how that was a bad decision from Drew Allar with that late interception that led to Notre Dame's field goal. It was also a horrifically bad route. Horrifically bad. And that can improve. And look at the Big Ten championship game. If you have better receivers out there, maybe Penn State wins that game. But of course, winning that game was a death sentence. So that is 4-dimensional chess from James Franklin. We're not going to win this game.
To lose the big game. But
yeah,
that's why I compare them to Michigan, because they can run their way to victory with Singleton.
And by the way, that offensive line in the Big Ten championship game manhandled a great defensive line for Oregon, the best one they'd seen in 10 years.
And that's why we have him on the show here as a guest. First time, I think, too, Spencer. So
I believe so, if you don't count the crossover episode that we did.
That is true. That's what I'm thinking of. So that is Spencer McLaughlin over on the other side. Links to his work will be down in the description. A good, sensible, reasonable discussion about why Penn State is one of the top teams going into next season. Whether you have questions about them, they are going to be at the top of the conversation. Spencer, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
You are welcome, Zach. Anytime, my man.
And again, thank you so much for checking out this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. As always, let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. Be a part of the conversation down below and let me know your thoughts. If you are new to the show, subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcast. Please leave a like on this episode and share it with friends and family. I'd greatly appreciate it. And thank you for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. For your second listen and watch, check out Locked On Big Ten with host Craig Sheeman. Craig puts the Big Ten first when other people overlook it, and with this past college football playoff, that seems to be the case. You can find Locked On Big Ten available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.